Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Accessibility Talks, or Alley Talks, the monthly virtual meetup where we chat about digital accessibility, inclusivity, and usability. Each month, we invite a speaker to present a topic, and afterward, we invite the community to ask questions and participate in the discussion. I'm your host today. My name is Aubrey Sambor. I am a lead front-end developer, and I use the pronouns she, her. I am a white female with pink glasses and long blue hair, and I am wearing a black shirt and gray cardigan. Before we dive into the talk, let's take a moment to remind everyone that our group is committed to creating a friendly and safe environment for all. We expect all participants, speakers, hosts, viewers on YouTube, and those commenting on social media to follow the Accessibility Talks Code of Conduct. This applies to all community interactions, including events, verbal questions, and text and chat and text channels. You can review the full code of conduct on our website at a11yTalks.com/conduct. Our goal is to foster productive dialogue where participants can share and learn from one another in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Got questions? Great, we love questions. This year, we're shaking things up and trying a new format. We're now inviting viewers to submit their questions ahead of each talk so we can incorporate them into the recording session. If you have a question for our speaker, here's how you can ask. During our live streamed video, type your question directly into the YouTube chat window. If you're not watching live, you can still post your questions. Add them to the comment section on YouTube or share them on LinkedIn, Mastodon, or Blue Sky. Just make sure to @ us or include the hashtag AlleyTalks. That's A11yTalks. Direct links to all of our social media platforms are listed on our website. We look forward to hearing from you. Huge shout out to our bronze sponsors, Agile Collective and Principal Financial Group. We appreciate your support. I want to give a shout out to our Alley Cat Club members who donate monthly to Alley Talks and our one-time donors as well. Thank you so much for your financial contributions. Want to see your organization or you recognized as a sponsor of Alley Talks and help fund these amazing monthly meetups? Visit our sponsorship page at alleytalks.com/sponsorship to learn more. We need your financial support to compensate our amazing speakers and improve our live stream productions to provide the best host, best content possible for our community. If your company uses Benevity for matching donations or gifts, you can double your contribution. Just search for Alley Talks, and we should appear as Alley Talks by Midwest Open Source Alliance. All right, today we have Rob Carr, Strategic Accessibility Coordinator at WebAIM. Before we get started, Rob has a fun fact. There are at least 3 Rob Carrs out there on the internet. I mean, obviously there's probably more, but can you tell me more about your run-ins with other Rob Carrs online?
So there's a Robert Carr who I actually ran into in person because I accidentally picked up his name badge at a conference several years ago. And we get mistaken for each other too, because we do talk on a lot of the same kinds of things, kind of more strategic or procurement, stuff like that. And then in the lead up to this, there's another Rob Carr who's not an accessibility person, but he was credited not by you all, but by somebody else as giving the next Alley Talks talk. So there are a lot of us out there, apparently. There's probably Rob Carrs we haven't yet identified.
Yeah, it's funny that there were 2 of you at the same conference and had the same name badge, obviously with the same name. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, it was a good icebreaker when we met because he actually goes by Robert. I go by Rob.
Oh,
And so I was like, I accidentally picked up your name badge. I'm sorry, but it's really nice to meet you. So it was a really good just get that out of the way and you're old friends immediately.
oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad it worked out. Anyway, you were going to present organizational scaffolding for accessible design and content. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks so much. And thank you so much to you all on the Alley Talks team for having me. I'm really thrilled to have the chance to come in, talk a little bit about something that I think is really important, and that's supporting people doing accessibility work, not strictly accessibility, but supporting a whole bunch of people in folding accessibility into what they do. So my name is Rob Carr, and I've been with WebAIM now for just over 3 years, and I've been doing accessibility work since 2010, so a little while in the space. and thrilled again to be here with y'all for a little bit. So when we think about this, I want to start by discussing a little bit how many people are involved in something like putting together a website design or redesign, folding a site out, right? Just to start to build a case for the need for this scaffolding that I'll talk about a little bit later on. We've got internal clients, we've got our marketing and brand management. We've got our designers who are contributing to the design. More than likely, if you have an IT group, they're going to be involved. Your content contributors, your target audience is a really massive part of this conversation that a lot of time we don't take enough time to address. And then a big one that I'm going to talk about as well is our organizational leadership. So for the first few minutes of the talk, I want to focus on some of these bigger picture things because I think they're really, really important. And I don't think we slow down enough to consider some of this stuff. So on screen now, I've got a picture. Since scaffolding is in the name of the talk, I had to have a picture of scaffolding just to make the point that I think it's critical that we have a lot of scaffolding around folks at all different levels. At the project level, that's really where I'm going to focus in terms of showing some things that are out there that other organizations have done that are really helpful. But then at the product level, we need another layer of support. We need a layer of support, really multiple layers all through our organization. And it's because if you think about that list that I went through real quick of folks who were involved in a website redesign, there are a lot of people influencing our technology, and we'll have influence from policy, if not directly. We'll have direct influence in terms of design decisions, product decisions. Without having a scaffolding that goes across the organization, the ceiling is a lot lower. So, big picture, something to keep in mind. This is a lot bigger conversation, in my view, than just what can we bring to the people who are doing the work. And I think with accessibility, well, we know there are challenges with accessibility in a lot of ways, especially right now. But one of the challenges that I've seen organizations struggle with is not understanding that accessibility is something that deserves a little bit more time. When we talk about scaffolding, I think that time is one of the most important pieces to bring into this conversation because it's necessary for everything that I'm going to talk about. So if you think about, or if you've ever been through that new website that I talked about before with all of the different players from the organization, generally it's okay, even up to the senior leadership level, for us to slow down a little bit. People realize that a few weeks out from rolling out a new site, especially if we're going to have a new content management system, it doesn't make sense to keep putting content on the existing site. So we start to ease the pace and turn our attention to the next new thing. Some of that might be training and getting some practice in on the new content management system if it's coming into play in the conversation. And then when the site goes up, you have the new technology. The expectation usually isn't to just get right back up to speed. There's an understanding, again, even at the senior leadership level, that it's going to take a minute for people to actually use the thing. Practicing is one thing, but actually getting stuff into production and using it is very different. So that means that this disruption is something that everyone, even if it's reluctantly, accepts. Implementing accessibility is very, very different, unfortunately. And while we need a lot of the same pauses in work to really get accessibility folded in, it doesn't often happen. Ultimately, accessibility skills are just new skills, right? So that skill set that somebody has to build to learn how to use a new content management platform, the same idea applies to folding accessibility into their work. So for example, you think about alternative text. If you've been in the accessibility space for a while, then it's probably almost reflexive. And most of the images in my slides are really decorative, but I think everybody deserves to know that on screen right now, I've got a picture of like a light golden lab with a Labrador retriever dog with a little gray striped cat, and the cat is laying across the dog's outstretched legs, front legs, and the dog has its muzzle on the kitty, and the kitty's looking at the dog, and it's just the best. So I wanted to share some of that joy with everybody. But with alternative text, we've got several things to learn. We need to learn and understand what it is and why it's critical, which may involve learning that screen readers exist for a lot of people, right? We need to then figure out the mechanics and practice actually putting alternative text into the different pieces of content we create. This all takes a little bit of time when it's new. You have to learn the concept, practice the skill, and then put the skill into practice in your day-to-day workflow. All of that leads to this. we have to make time as organizations. I'm a very, very strong advocate for accounting for time and making time to bring accessibility skills up to where they need to be. We need more skills or more time when things are brand new, when we're just learning. The learning curve is a little bit steeper, so we need a bit more time there. That means that whoever manages your project work needs to support the teams. They need to support you in doing the work and getting up to speed. That means their product managers, whatever that role is called in your organization, they need to support the project managers and make sure that if the project manager slows things down, product isn't leaning on them to keep the pace going as high as it was before. And all this boils up to senior leadership. You have to have the support of senior leadership. And I'll wrap up with a couple of words about that. Having vice president or higher level leadership on accessibility is really critical for all the rest of the stuff that I'm going to talk through to really work. You can do a fair amount grassroots. It's usually more difficult. It's usually not as easy to scale, or it doesn't scale the way we'd like for it to if it's purely coming from the bottom to the top and pushing. And many of you probably are living that every day and really struggling to make the kinds of inroads within other parts of the organization or even outside of your desk, right? And I think that what we aim for when we have these conversations a lot of the time is we talk about getting buy-in and we talk about getting support from leadership. And I think in the accessibility space, it would do us good to consider more nudging toward using more active language with what we ask for from our leadership. We need leadership to facilitate this work. A lot of the things that I'm going to demonstrate are maybe easy to fold into some of the resources that you already have. But when it comes to really getting this to work and really getting this to take root, we need people facilitating the work at a high level. We need champions in senior leadership. How to build that is a completely different conversation, but I feel like I'm kind of taking some of the advice I've started giving lately, which is when we have conversations about accessibility, a lot of the time we don't give enough attention to this facet of it because while you can't look at a web content accessibility guideline fail and trace it directly back to a lack of leadership, there's definitely a connection to inaccessible products shipping and getting published and leadership not actively leading on it. And what we're really aiming for is to make accessibility a part of the norm for the organization. I'm going to use the word norm like this a few times because I think that a lot of these things I want to see happen more often do help to make accessibility an expectation, just make it a baseline expectation in the different audiences that these things aim for. Okay, so there's the big picture stuff. Let's get to what you're probably tuned in for. There are a ton of points where accessibility can and I think should integrate with different roles. And then there are tools that we'll talk about, and I'll talk through and show a few that can really help to do that. I'm going to focus not on all of these, but I will go through it and just kind of spell out this as kind of a baseline. I just got done talking about senior leadership. I feel like I've covered that well enough for this talk for sure. But we have integration points for accessibility just about everywhere in product and project management, in UX and UI research and design, in web design and in content authoring, web development, and quality assurance. And for a lot of organizations, their accessibility journey begins really at the end. I've worked with a bunch of organizations over the years that accounted for accessibility in quality assurance in QA, but not really anywhere else. And what we've started to see emerge over the last few years is a conversation about working accessibility further upstream. So it's just, instead of addressing it just at the end, working back into these other pieces, working back to UX and UI research, and then seeing accessibility kind of move from there into design and authoring, development, and QA. And the idea is really important. And it's not a new idea. It's just one that I feel like has started to come up more often in the context of accessibility. But what we are thinking about doing here in moving accessibility into these different project stages is accounting for it much, much earlier. There are a lot of benefits too. I'll go back to the previous slide. There are a lot of benefits to having all of these different brains with all of these different skills consider accessibility at all of these different phases of a project. If you think about having more inclusive UX and UI research, that's going to lend itself to a lot of positive ripple effects throughout the course of a project or the ongoing life of a product, because that's going to inform our practice from that point on. So if it's a part of your existing UX or UI research, you're casting a much wider net and you're getting a lot more input, and you have UX and UI researchers who approach the question of how the web needs to work differently. Same with designers, right? If we shift left far enough to reach at least our UX and UI designers, or if you don't have UX or UI research, well, then your designers approach these challenges, design challenges, not just accessibility, but design challenges in general, with a very different perspective than a web designer might, than a developer might. So as we start to really see the positive impact of shifting accessibility left, I think one of the things we can trace that positivity back to is just that we have now many more skill sets who are contributing to the final work. If we get accessibility into at least our design work, then we have an opportunity to identify difficult or troublesome or impossible interactions from an accessibility perspective before they're loved by everybody. With visual design in particular, if a visual design element goes all the way through approval and gets shipped to get built, and then as it's being built, we account for accessibility, that can be tricky. There can be a lot of tension because people fell in love with the visual design, but it's not accessible because of color contrast is probably one of the more common areas that this happens. And more so than trying to identify those difficult interactions before they are loved, we're trying to identify them and reduce the chance that they ship, that the troublesome design actually does go live. So think about inclusive personas. If you use personas, and I'll say this with any of these things I'm going to talk through, I'm not necessarily suggesting that you build something new just because of accessibility. There might be times when you need to, but what I'm trying to tease out in this conversation is where are some places that we can look to add accessibility to what you're already doing. So back to the conversation. If we are creating inclusive personas, hopefully if you're creating personas, you have the opportunity to do some research to inform them. Not every shop has that. But if we, again, begin with the inclusive research that drives how we form our personas, we have a much more complete view of what these might look like. With personas, just in general, and certainly with accessibility, I think it helps teams to really focus on the humans, focus on the people who are going to use our stuff. And with inclusive personas that include those with disabilities, we have an opportunity to put in front of our project teams a way to increase the awareness of what's needed by people with disabilities who are going to use whatever product we're creating, and what's possible with assistive technologies. For example, if you have personas that include speech to text users or switch interface users, then it's a way to help to inform the people who reflect on those and rely on those for their design work, that there are these assistive technologies out there and that there are a lot of different ways that people perceive and interact with the web. So I'm going to show an example. This is from Stanford University. And this is just a part of it. I don't want to scroll too much on the screen. So this is just a part of one of their personas that focuses on the WCAG guideline of understandable. And what this states is that for Camilla to consume digital content easily, the content needs to be kept simple. Her challenge is digesting the level of information presented. Camilla feels pressure from unexpected context changes and when fast decisions are required. She should also represent a new or inexperienced technology user who doesn't know where to begin when too much information is presented all at once. They go on to give some demographic information. 23-year-old graduate student on the autism spectrum often turns off images to focus on content. Sessions timing out causes frustration. And then there's a quote from this fictional character that says, everything seems complicated when too much is happening at once. So this does very much put the human element into a bunch of web content accessibility guidelines. They mentioned specifically turning off images. There's an accessibility implication there for really reinforcing the need for alternative text, because if images are disabled, alt text is going to show up. sessions timing out. There are WCAG success criteria related to that. So from here, we can use that as a jumping off point to move into the functional accessibility of the end product. Again, I'm not suggesting that you need to make that you need to fold personas into your work if you haven't already. If they're there, then look for opportunities to inject accessibility into them. And this is another one. I said I was going to say this several times. This is the first in this more specific part of the conversation of many ways that I think it helps to reinforce accessibility as a norm for the organization. So after we do research, we think about our designers. And this, I think, is where a lot of the shift left conversation is going. And it might not go much farther right now. There are more folks who are stressing that we really need to shift accessibility all the way to our research if we do UX and UI research. But a lot of the conversations at least get to this point, accessibility in design artifacts. So wireframes, mockups, prototypes, you can put different levels of detail in these different design artifacts based on what the artifact actually shows. If it's a really bare bones wireframe that just shows interaction and layout, then you're not going to be able to add as much as you can in something that's more of a mock-up that brings our color scheme in. So when this conversation about shifting accessibility left, at least for most organizations, I think has got into where they're considering accessibility for designers. So you do the user research, whatever you can do. Again, hopefully that's inclusive. It includes those with disabilities. That informs what you're doing in your design work. Well, you can do a lot during the design process to annotate and make note about accessibility. It doesn't matter if you're using wireframes that might be more bare bones and really just show interaction and layout. Maybe you have mockups that bring in your color scheme and let you intercept some trouble with accessibility in the color that you might use. You might have a more functional prototype where you can really dig in and emphasize that, okay, these things need to work in this way. There are a lot of really good plugins for Figma. One that I have seen used, and I think it's one of the older that is as comprehensive as it is. It's called Include, and it's just a plugin for Figma, and it lets you go through and annotate the Figma design. It does a little bit of kind of guided manual testing. It'll also test for color contrast in text on background. I think more than anything, it's like any other guided manual testing tool. It helps you to not overlook something, to not miss something during design. Again, if we're including annotations in our designs, then we have an opportunity to reinforce that it is a norm. To give you an example of things that you might mark up, maybe you have a really traditional web page layout. So you have a header with navigation, you have your main content with a sidebar of content, you have your footer. With Include and with others that are similar to it, you can pretty quickly just basically wrap those regions up and annotate those and note that they are heading, that they are header, page header, main content, footer. You have a search. You can mark a bunch of that stuff up in your design artifacts. If you don't use Figma, if you're using a tool that doesn't have anything like that, you can annotate this in a PDF if it'll spit one out. There are all kinds of ways that you can make these annotations. There was a really good talk at a conference a couple of months ago by a guy called Sam Hobson, and he brought up a really good point that in these annotations from the design team, we really might not want to worry too much about technical implementation guidance. He showed several examples from some of his work with clients that his group works with that showed on a design artifact specifics about how to implement ARIA. And they weren't correct. Now, I'm not at all bashing designers. We see a ton of ARIA implementation that is not good. And I'm not at all going to suggest that it's coming from designers. It's coming from developers, and it's coming from folks who are very well intentioned regardless of their role, and they're just missing out on what ARIA does and how it works. So with that disclaimer, it can still happen. With these tools, from what I've seen, a lot of these that will help you with the annotation, they stick more with the design elements and the things that make sense for a designer and their brain and their experience to focus on. And then the implementation piece goes on to the devs. So if we think about what can we spin up for developers, Folding accessibility into design systems or anything like it. You have a pattern library, of course, try to make, or a component library, try to make your components accessible. Any documentation that you can build up to explain the accessibility, I think is just helpful. You're going to have new people join the team. You're going to have people that are new to accessibility that end up on a project where it's really critical. And if you have documentation and examples, it can be really, really, really helpful. So this is also a good way to cross-reference from some annotations that might be on your design artifacts into documentation in a design system or a pattern library. And again, helps to make accessibility more of a norm. A couple of examples that I will show real quick. The US web design system has a lot of really good information about accessibility. I've drilled down to a couple of levels. This is the accordion panel component that they have. And this is a little bit of documentation about the accessibility test that they've done. I think this is fantastic. I think it's great to do what they did a level up, which is just explain a little bit about accessibility and how it's supported. But this talks specifically about when you implement this pattern, when you drop this component into your web property, how do you verify that it's working when it gets into the container that you have? Is there anything in yours that might break the functionality? So they go through and explain how to test with zoom magnification. They show that they've got 3 checkpoints here. No need to scroll horizontally when the screen is magnified. You have a clear focus indicator. Content doesn't get cut off when the screen is magnified. I think this is really, really great. The level up from this is pretty helpful as well because this is back up now to just the accordion component page. And they give the test status for accessibility. They're very clear about that. And then you fold on into all fold into or move into this accordion test page that I was just on. And this is one piece, I just checked this today. So as of early to mid-April, this is still published within the federal design system. One that we use and a lot of you all might use really frequently is the authoring practices guide for ARIA that the World Wide Web Consortium has created. The intent of this is to provide examples of highly accessible components. So you would expect this to be really, really well documented, and it is. I'm using an accordion example here as well from the APG. One of the things that I like about this in particular, and this is true in all of the patterns within the APG, is they give you very specific guidance about the expected keyboard interactions that these patterns should have, which is really, really helpful, particularly if you're extending something and you need to do some customization, or you want to be sure that some customization hasn't broken something or shipped something out that doesn't interact with the keyboard as somebody would expect. Another audience that is, of course, really, really critical is our content creators. From the design and dev side, there are a lot more resources. I said this earlier, at least at a high level, trying to really just introduce some ideas and show you a few real life examples of some things that have proven to be helpful to folks I've worked with over the years. And I think we need to consider our content creators as well as part of this conversation. The idea with all of these, and it's true here, is we're putting accessibility where people are already trying to find information, right? So if we think about a style guide, that's a really common tool that in a lot of organizations does get quite a bit of use. Any kind of brand management that you put out where you can fold accessibility information in, I would suggest do it. It's often an easy thing to do. It might not require real high up leadership approval to do. And it's a good way to get the information, as I said, where people seek it out. A couple of quick examples here. One is MailChimp. So they have an entire piece within their content style guide about accessibility. And they say to make sure that you label forms, use descriptive links, use plain language. And there's just a paragraph of a couple of sentences each. So it's really high level information, which is in keeping with the way that they present other information in the style guide. It's not meant to be conclusive and all inclusive, excuse me, but it's really helpful to get reminders. And then maybe you need to dig in a little bit and find out, okay, well, where do I go to put alt text in an image that I put in? Another one that I want to show, this is a style guide from the University of Michigan. This is their overall university design resources, and they've got in their set of design resource information, good information on colors, typography, accessibility, photography, templates, special initiative toolkits, and then there's a downloadable version of this style guide that's online. So accessibility literally in that list. It's a part of the conversation. We click on into that, we get some guidance, some quick tips that you can link or that are linked out to, information about digital accessibility, a link to their accessibility website. So keeping it in the conversation, not maybe as much detail as what you'll see in some, but it shows again that including accessibility in these conversations from the very beginning, and in a case like this, it's making sure that it's included in this content will at least help to keep people from not thinking about it at all or forgetting about it. Another way, as I've been saying, to make accessibility a norm. So big picture, kind of closing thought here. If we can get this inclusive mindset ingrained, I think there are some real positive ripples that we could see. It's not going to be the case everywhere, but if we get to a place where inclusivity and accessibility is indeed a norm with design and developers, QA, with the skilled people who contribute to our digital products, then what the organization is going to realize is that that's an accessible skill. We need people who know accessibility. We need to support people. We need training. We need maybe some of the scaffolding that I've talked about. And that can lead to then creating incentives and putting accessibility into job descriptions. Again, normalizing accessibility and understanding that the skill set is somewhat unique, at least now. We want it to be much more widespread, but for now, there aren't a ton of people who are highly skilled practitioners, but we can build that, right? Even if we see that job descriptions indicate that accessibility is a preferred skill and not a required skill, if we get to a place where it is a norm and it's included in the hiring process and it's really something that organizations emphasize, then we can find incentives that pop up just naturally with performance evaluation and things like that. That if it's in the job description, we're going to create this infrastructure. We're going to provide training. Ideally, we're going to realize that we do need some time, like I said earlier on. And ultimately, of course, we have better products. We have products that do less harm to those that have disabilities who are trying to interact with us. So ideally, this will have some really positive ripple effects out from the several things that I've talked about, the handful of things I've talked about, thinking about making inclusivity just a part of the organization's definition of done, right? We talk about that from time to time, that accessibility is just part of what we do. So if we can successfully ingrain accessibility into our organization, and we have an inclusive mindset across design, which leads into dev, which feeds into QA, then what we see bigger picture, hopefully, is that accessibility becomes a desired skill, a skill that the organization seeks when it recruits and hires people. So you see accessibility in job descriptions. Well, that kind of creates its own set of incentives. If something's in a job description, the organization is probably going to measure people's progress, and the organization is hopefully going to support them in doing the work. Ultimately, we see better products. We see products that do less harm to those with disabilities on the web, and that's the goal. So hopefully a few of these ideas, even if it's stuff that you're already doing, maybe there's some validation. And if it's not something you're already doing, hopefully you've been able to come out with a few ideas about some possible ways forward that might help to improve your practice. So I just want to say thank you again to the A11yTalks crew and team for hosting these just in general and for letting me come in and spend a little bit of time with y'all. If you want to find out a little bit more about what we do and if you want to learn a lot about accessibility, go to webaim.org. When I started doing this work back in 2009, 2010, It was about the most human readable website about accessibility, and there's just a ton of information. We add stuff just about every month. We add at least two new pieces that cover different topics. There's an email discussion list that's actually still pretty active. We have a monthly newsletter where we send out whatever we have published recently, but we also grab bits and pieces from other people who have written about other parts of accessibility on the web. There's a blog that we publish too. We've got tutorials and resources. And then we will have our free online conference coming up in the fall. We haven't settled on dates yet, but you can find us on LinkedIn. We still exist on X. And if you want to connect, I invite you to connect with me. I'm Rob Carr, A11y. That's ROBCARR A11y on LinkedIn. I don't exist on other socials. And going back to the fun fact, if you use that handle, you'll find me if that's who you're seeking out. So I invite that connection. I think it's really important right now. You're not just connecting with me, but just connecting in general with the community. This is a great professional community, and really highly encourage you now when we do have a lot of headwinds as a professional space and as human beings trying to advance accessibility. We're going to need each other. So highly encourage you to connect any way that you can. And yeah, thanks so much. I think we might have a few questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. This was awesome. I was so happy you brought up you at the United States Web Design System accessibility documentation. I have found that to be super awesome. So thank you for bringing that up and sharing it with everybody else who's going to be watching this. So thank you very much. So yeah, we have a couple questions for you, and the first one is on the screen. It's how do you ensure accessibility scaffolding keeps up with evolving tech and standards?
I mean, we were talking before we started just about how frequently Zoom changes and how much of a challenge it is to keep up, right? I think that this becomes kind of a resource issue, right? I think the way that organizations keep up with technology in general is they have at least close to an appropriate number of human beings who are dedicated to these technologies. And unfortunately, in most organizations, even very large tech organizations, you've got an accessibility team of like three, right? And so I think the challenge here is just that the scale of the work isn't matched by the scale of the workforce that most organizations hire on. So I think this is another, almost any question that I get, I scale up to it's an organizational problem. But I think it is. I think it's that we need more people who know accessibility around different parts of the organization, and people that have accessibility as a specific set of expertise as well, who are charged with making sure that we're keeping up with the different changes that come. I also think people say that accessibility changes all the time. I think this question is, I like the way this is worded. It's that the technology changes all the time, and what are the implications from that? But I think it's an organizational issue where we need more experts and we need more expertise distributed more widely.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I totally agree it should start from the top. So yeah, I totally agree. So thank you for answering. All right, next question is, how do you balance flexibility and consistency when building accessibility scaffolding into design systems or code bases?
I mean, willful management, it's another big gap, right? I feel like almost every other aspect of building out a design system and managing a code base, we have governance in place, whether that's formal governance that's written into policy or it's, not policy driven, but it's still enforced. I think it's a very similar thing, if not the same. And again, it goes back to then the challenge is that there aren't enough experts who are involved in building the guardrails for the design system or the code base. So I think it's not any different than what we do with other pieces, for accounting for information security and making sure that we're building that into our code. Well, that's managed, and you have people who know infosec, and someone's role is to come in and do that. So I think it's, I don't want to say almost the same thing as I did in the last question, but I think fundamentally it does come back to we have to have the expertise involved in those steps of building this up and maintaining it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a feeling that answer is probably going to come across all these questions, but
Right.
it's good to repeat it. Yeah, because it's very important. So I agree. Next question. How do you introduce the concept of scaffolding to designers or developers who may not prioritize accessibility yet?
I think that is where, so it's not the exact same answer, but I think that when you're hearing about accessibility as a requirement from your leadership, so even if we can get to a product manager, if that product manager is emphasizing accessibility to their project teams, this gets to be a lot easier the adoption is a lot easier to get at the dev or any other level, right? But I think that's why I didn't really lead the talk, but mostly started the talk thinking about leadership and making sure that this is not just a grassroots thing, because it's hard. Even if you're a project manager, you really want accessibility to be a part of everything you do. You don't have maybe a ton of clout, right, in terms of making sure it happens, and you have to build that case. If you're in that situation, you're trying to build the business case at a more local level, then I think there are a lot of great things. The W3C World Wide Web Consortium, they have their perspectives videos. You can Google that. That can help to, from people's lived experience, kind of share with the developer what this means. If it's like the stereotypical developer who just wants to build stuff that they like, then that's a bigger issue. But in my experience, there aren't a ton of those out there anymore. And developers are thinking more about the humans that use their stuff. And a lot of the time, they just don't know. I think I said that earlier. If somebody doesn't know that screen reading software exists, then introducing just the fact that there are these assistive technologies and people interact with their devices in a lot of different ways, that can be enough with a lot of developers, just because they don't know that these interactions are possible. So, to me, the question is about, as much as anything, building the case to a dev and kind of showing a developer evidence that the work that they do can do harm to people who are trying to use it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm a developer, so I've definitely seen that shift over the years of my career for developers who are more interested in making sure what they're building is accessible to everybody. So I think it's good to have. I think that's good to have. So thank you. Next question. What are some early wins you've seen from teams adopting accessibility scaffolding?
Early wins. I mean, my mind immediately goes to the shift left piece in particular. So maybe this will jog a thought about this broader question. But I worked with a team once where accessibility only lived in QA. And of course, then the devs, they're getting pulled over without a posted speed limit, right? They're getting graded on a test that they haven't been taught anything about. And so in terms of an early, and it wasn't an easy win because it took a little bit to get accessibility to at least move to where the devs are familiar with it. It just lowered the tension. I think that's one of the things with a lot of the conversation about building scaffolding up and helping to provide more resources and more guidance, more reference for teams. It tends to, beyond just the shift left piece that I just talked about, I think that it helps normalize it, right? It helps to set that expectation. And I can't think of anything specific really with this, so I don't know. I don't know if we're going to want to keep this one in or not, but because I don't have a great example.
No, I think you answered it pretty well. Again, it's the shifting left early on. I think that's really beneficial to help with scaffolding early on. So yeah, I think it was a good answer. Next question is, what's one thing every team could do tomorrow to start building more inclusive scaffolding practices?
I think step one is identify stuff that you already have where you think accessibility could fit, right? I think it's not quite a matter of saying, well, go and do this. It's consider who's using what. I talked about style guides. In some organizations, they're not widely used, if used at all, right? People go to a lot of trouble to build a style guide up, and no one refers to it, and it just lives on a website somewhere. So I think taking a good and honest look at where could we integrate some accessibility, especially if it's stuff that you own. If you own the content, if you're in marketing or comms, you create the style guide, we'll just start putting stuff in there, right? So I think that's the first thing that I would suggest teams do if they haven't already, is to just begin to identify the resources people use, the existing scaffolding that's there, and then start thinking about, can we directly add accessibility into it, or is there someone we can ask to do that?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And that was actually the last question we had. So thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you so much for all the questions you answered for us. So yeah, this was amazing. This was such a good presentation. So thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thanks again to y'all. I really appreciate it.
All right, so we're just about done. We're going to wrap it up with a couple little kind of housekeeping news. We're always looking for speakers and new voices in the accessibility community. We make a conscious effort to include marginalized groups in tech in our speaker lineup. If you are interested, please reach out to us at team@A11yTalks.com. For those with IAAP certifications, A11yTalks speakers and attendees receive professional development credits, also known as CAECs, through IAAP for your continuing education. We'd love your feedback on what we are doing well and what we can do better. Go to A11yTalks.com/feedback to share your positive and or less than positive feedback. We value your input. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss a talk. Consider contributing to A11yTalks through Benevity or our Open Collective page, which is at opencollective.com/A11yTalks. Follow us on LinkedIn. Also follow us on Blue Sky, Mastodon, and any other social media that you have. Thank you for attending. We'll see you next time.